Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about, we're going to go back to Crete in the Minoan civilization. Just to take you guys back, in 1982, this scientist and actually this archaeologist, he discovered this crazy huge palace that was built into the bedrock at 1,200 meters below sea level, above sea level. And it was built on the highest mountain, Mount Ida, on a plateau next to it. Ever since then, they've been excavating it and finding new stuff every year to this day. The guy who found it, Dr. Sakalarakis, he died in, I think, 2008 or something. Anyway, he died, and his wife took over the excavations, and they're still excavating it. So this is like a huge undertaking right now, and they're finding a bunch of stuff. Just a little background though, let me pull up this map here. This is Greece. This is modern day Greece, and right here is basically Crete, and these are the Cyclades islands right here, and this is Rhodes right here. So Crete, or the Minoan civilization, these dots right here, Knossos, Phaistos, Malia, Akrotiri, all these places are major palaces. They know that there are several reasons why they know that they belong together in the same time frame. One, the pottery, and two, the fact that these palaces all feature the same architecture and the same layout. Not the exact same layout, but they all feature the same things. These are the first palaces ever appear in Europe, like the earliest known palaces. So that's why they've separated them into different ages. So just to give you an insight on on why these palaces are so awesome. One, they have their own plumbing and their own sewage system made with like clay and terracotta pipes, basically. Two, it's been a source of a bunch of different mythology, even religions. So for example, one of the historians, I forget his name, it escapes me right now, but he's said that the Jews may have come from here, like originally come from here. So I mean, it's been a source of trade. It's dealt with empires far, like the ancient Egyptians, even ancient Canaan, and Turkey, and like everything up in Asia Minor, and the Levant. The earliest date they have for the Minoans are the 7th millennium BC, but that's because that's the first sign of a settlement there, like any type of settlement that they can prove. But really, they found bones there, and tools that go back 120, 130 years, 130,000 years. Excuse me. So it's a huge mystery. They don't know how people got there. I think the leading theory is they took boats from Africa to get there, which wouldn't be much of a ride. Or another suggestion is they came from the mainland, the Greek mainland, and then they took boats there. Let's just look at there's a better map somewhere. Well, I don't know. I can't find the map. Anyway, so it was all signs point to it being a really successful and a really powerful nation. That it didn't have any fortified walls either. So it's and it had all this, the layout of the palaces and the architecture, the layout of the city, the architecture of the palaces, all this stuff supposedly happened like over 5,000 years ago. And remember, the first of its kind. And it's very similar to ancient Egypt in the sense where when ancient Egypt's discovered, it's not like a fledgling civilization and then it builds up and then it falls. It's found and discovered right at the peak of its prosperity. Like, that's what it looks like. I mean, why else would, like, the first things they find are these palaces, these beautiful palaces, which, by the way, these types of palaces, the architecture seem to inspire other palaces in other parts of the world as well. such as Canaan again and the Levant. So again, like, it's all a mystery. And adding to the mystery is, in the Neolithic period, some of the early influences upon the development of Cretan culture arise from the Cyclades and from Egypt. Cultural records are written in the undeciphered script known as Linear A. The archaeological record of Crete includes superb palaces, houses, roads, paintings, and sculptures. Okay, so back to the map. I said before, the thing all these places have in common are the palaces, the pottery, and also the script. They found a bunch of languages written in, this is Linear A, in this script, and they still have not deciphered this. So these are some of the tablets that they found with these inscriptions. More here. I think this one is from Santorini Island, and here. So if you don't know, Linear A is basically the language that was there before the Greeks and after their settlement, which is Linear B, which is what they were able to decipher. So you have these two languages at distinct different periods of time, before and after a certain influence. It all happened largely because of a Thera eruption. If you guys go back maybe a month, I did an episode on tree rings, and they were able to figure out exactly when the Santorini eruption happened. And when that happened, it just completely devastated the civilization. And then after that, it developed an ancient Greek influenced organization of city-states, and then became part of the Roman Empire, and then the Byzantine Empire, and then the Venetian Republic, and then the Ottoman Empire, and then it became its own state for a while, and then now it's part of the modern state of Greece. All because of that eruption, man. That eruption just completely annihilated whatever cultural Minoan civilization they had going. Because of the lack of written records, estimates of Cretan technology are based on well-established Aegean and ancient Near Eastern pottery styles, so that Cretan timelines have been made by seeking Cretan artifacts traded with other civilizations. So that's the other thing about the Minoans. A lot of their pottery they traded with a lot of people, and so all their stuff is scattered throughout. So that's another way the archaeologists date their civilization, is by the time period that other civilizations had their stuff. So for example, ancient Egypt, they found a bunch of pottery from the Minoan civilization. And those dated to a certain time around the ballpark. So that's how they get their number, basically. A lot of scientists and a lot of fringy people, they think that Atlantis is or Crete is Atlantis, the Minoan civilization is Atlantis. But I don't think so, just because the dates don't match up. Remember, Atlantis was supposed to be around 9,600 years, or 9,600 BC and earlier, around there, around the turn of the Younger Dryas. And it would make more sense if they said the people who made up Crete in ancient Egypt, and even the ancient people, the Olmecs maybe, that they were the stragglers from Atlantis, the people who survived. The reason why that would make more sense is because the dates would match up. Because remember, the earliest settlement is about 7,000 BC, and that's like a lot of places with anatomically modern humans that have any sign of agriculture. About 9,000, 7,000, the 7th millennium BC, around there. And secondly, they have, like, it didn't take them long to come up with these huge, which at the time were probably skyscrapers almost. By their standards, not by our standards, but their standards. Zominthos, which we're talking about, they built 3-story buildings that were grounded in the bedrock, so they were very stable. And they had, again, like I said, they had a very complex sewage system. So it seemed like they got all this knowledge fairly quickly. And I guess you can say that human ingenuity from hunter-gatherers, if they put their heads together, they're able to figure this out. But I don't know, it just seems too advanced, and there's frescoes and there's colors, and there's just so much like life and culture. It seems like they must have either gotten it somewhere or they were there longer than the dates suggest. So either way, they were a very impressive civilization, no doubt about that. Tablets inscribed in Linear A have been found in numerous sites in Crete and a few in the Aegean Islands. The Minoans established themselves in many islands besides ancient Crete. Secure identifications of Minoan off-island sites include Kia, Cathera, Milos, Rhodes, and above all Thera. So yeah, back at this map. So there are more inscriptions and linear A script found all over these islands. And just one, I just want to point out one thing before we actually look at Zominthos itself, which is one of the palaces. They found a lot of stuff at the bottom of the Mediterranean. I'm talking about ruins, not just sunken ships, which there are plenty of those too. But there are sunken ruins, and there's a lot like arches and parts of architecture and stone buildings and stuff under there. And they're speculating now that there's probably a city in the Mediterranean basin at some point. This boggles the mind of a lot of people, and this is part of the reason why they think the Minoans are Atlantis. They think Atlantis was the civilization that got submerged in the Mediterranean. But the problem is that doesn't make sense, because Plato wrote that they were beyond the Pillars of Heracles, and I tend to agree with him. I think it's probably in the Azore Islands, which are probably the tops of the peaks of what would be Atlantis. And there's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of reasons why the Azores fit the description of Atlantis better than Crete does, but that's another video. Anyway, let's just get to the article. So it was a complex with 3-story buildings grounded in the rock at 1,200 meters above sea level. They found a bunch of clefts in the rock where they would be like offering sites, like cup-shaped vases or discs or egg cups, and they're all painted and they're all antiques and they're all like ornately displayed in the stone cases. And here's a picture of one of them, and you can see they look like little cubbies here. It's hard to tell because it looks really dirty. In its heyday, it must have looked amazing. So the results of the annual excavation, you can see it on the website. I'll post it. They have notes, like month by month notes of what they did up to this day. From 1982 up to this day, it's incredible how well they kept the records. So Zominthos is on a small plateau in the northern foothills of Mount Silurides on Crete. I thought it was Mount Ida, but I guess it's Mount Silurides. It has more than 150 rooms. Okay, this is supposed to be like 5,000 years ago, and they have 150 rooms. The large limestone floor slabs, which look like marble, have not been found elsewhere in the area, and they were brought there from a quarry 20 kilometers away. So that's like, what, 12 miles? Right? That's like 12 miles away? Yeah, like 12 miles away. It was a religious, political, and economic center that was also used in the post-Mycenaean era. So Mycenaeans, they're the ones who came in after the explosion at Thera, and they kind of took over, and that's when linear B script came out. They found a fragment in the shape of a bull's head to the east of the building, but they didn't find other religious objects. So it's really interesting. So they didn't seem to have like a overarching religion until later. This section yielded bronze daggers, seals, stone vessels, and a fragment of a chalice with a small bronze spoon dated before 1750 BC. So that's like a little bit before the explosion happened. Because remember, the explosion was around between 1600 to 1700 BC, around there. So this is like right before that. It is the first time a multi-story building has been found on a rock in a center of habitation. A stone vessel with a relief depicting a worshipper placing an offering on an altar between rocks had previously been found at the area of Jispades Hill at Knossos. Okay. So this is a great hall, and this pillar in the center that supported the second story, or the upper stories rather, and there are other columns as well. Obviously that part's gone now, but this is what's left of it, and it looks pretty well thought out and well planned for people who were supposedly hunter-gatherers. This year, an entrance from north to south was found with the double door leading to a paved area built on a suitably shaped part of the rock. So this, every year, like I said earlier, every year they find something new. And the thing new this year was this entrance, this completely new entrance. So they keep the place keeps getting bigger and bigger every year as they unearth more. It may have served an outdoor area for sports or ceremonies, and later as a courtyard of the building that the Romans built on the Minoan ruins. So that's something the Romans did a lot of. They built on top of palaces and other ruins and stuff just because they thought, like, they recognized the importance of the location, and they just built on top of it so they could reap that benefit, whatever benefit they recognized from the previous civilization that built there. They did the same thing in the east too, like the Temple of Zeus or Temple of Jupiter is a very famous temple in the Middle East, and that before that was I think it was the Temple of Solomon. No, I might be wrong on that. It was some other temple before that, and they could tell because there's what the Romans built, and then underneath it is a completely different structure, a completely different foundation, and they're known to do that. Definitely, Zominthos was much older than the Romans, and they know the Romans were there because they found a coin showing the Emperor Hadrian and Marcus Aurelius last year. So 100% there is a Roman presence at the site. In I think 100 and something AD is when Aurelius was something like that. Yeah, there's a great mixture of artifacts here that have been found, but the old stuff is where it's at, right? So what do you guys think about Crete and the Minoans? Do you think Crete was Atlantis? Do you think Atlantis is just hooey? Or do you think if there was an Atlantis, they were probably one of the main beneficiaries, or maybe not beneficiaries, but one of the populations that popped up that were derived from them? Let me know what you guys think, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow.